people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. On the heels of her latest victory, unbeaten up-and-comer Christina Cruz posted this to her social media with a caption that reads, "Back at it in March, stay tuned."
Christina Cruz, who sports a professional record of 4 wins, no losses, and no draws, no recorded knockouts, not yet. Her last contest was registered as a flyweight contest.
It's very encouraging that she's already seen action once, at least once this year, and she's already got another fight date lined up. It's encouraging because Christina Cruz is a network and promotional free agent. She's not with Matchroom, she's not with Golden Boy, she's not with Top Rank,
She's not with any of the major promotional outfits.
As you can imagine, not having a big promotional engine behind you, not having that, it can be a hindrance. So it's very encouraging that Christina just fought and she's set to see action again in a little over a month's time.
She's very skilled. She just needs the opportunity.
The opportunities to get out there and fight. Christina Cruz debuted as a professional in August of 2021.
Opposite the ring, the very lively India Smith. India Smith, she can be a handful.
It's the same India Smith that gave unbeaten up-and-comer from Russia, Fatima Dudieva, all she could handle. That's the same India Smith that just won a points decision over Suleiman Urbina. Christina Cruz made her professional debut against that same India Smith, and she won a majority decision.
I think that speaks to how good Christina Cruz is, the fact that she was able to make her pro debut against somebody like that and secure the W.
Secure the victory. India Smith, she's not an easy fighter to share the ring against.
She's not. She's a handful.
Christina won a points decision against her. She was last in action last month, a little over a week ago, opposite the ring, Amy Salinas.
Amy Salinas is about 18 years younger than Christina Cruz. 18 years, almost 2 decades younger than Christina. But once again, Christina was able to get the job done.
That's that amateur background from Christina Cruz shining through. That's what that is.
That was a flyweight contest.
Flyweight, that's where Marlon Esparza reigns as that division's unified WBA and WBC champion. Mexico's own Arely Mucino, she's got the IBF, and Argentina's own Gabriela Alaniz, she's got the WBO.
I feel like Christina Cruz's best bet to pick up an alphabet title in the women's flyweight division would have to be opposite the ring, Arely Mucino.
Which may not be what some would expect, it being that Arely Mucino is a more experienced fighter and a more experienced professional than either Marlon Esparza or Gabriela Alaniz. But the difference between them is that for all Arely Mucino's experience, she does look to have lost a step over time. She may be on the back nine, whereas Marlene and Gabriela, they're in their prime. They're only getting better fight by fight.
Arely Mucino's last fight opposite the ring, Argentina's then champion, Leonela Paula Judica, you could see that Arely's not the same offensive whirlwind that she used to be.
At 112 pounds, when it comes to the world title picture, the world title scene, I would say that Arely Mucino is the weakest link, and she would be Christina Cruz's best bet to pick up an alphabet title in the near future. For now, the first order of business is banking more rounds and garnering more professional experience.
She's already had a fight this year. She's got another one lined up in March.
It's the ideal schedule of activity for a fighter in the early stages of their careers. And ideally, Christina would fight at least 3 to 4 times this year overall. 3 to 4 times in the year of 2023. So by the end of it, she will be in position to challenge for an alphabet title.
She still needs more seasoning. You have to remember, Christina Cruz, skilled amateur that she might have been as a professional, she hasn't fought in a 10-rounder yet.
So there still is more work needs doing, and Christina is set to do it in March against an opponent that has yet to be announced.
Keep your eyes peeled for that.
The scheduled March ring return of unbeaten Christina Cruz will keep you posted. Men's light heavyweight news per a tweet from Michael Benson. I'm sure most of you have heard by now. WBC President Mauricio Suleiman has reiterated that the WBC still have a ban on Russian fighters, hence why he expects Artur Beterbiev to defend versus Callum Smith next and not have an undisputed fight with Dmitry Bivol. He said Bivol would have to request an exemption.
Well, not only would Dimitri have to request an exemption, but Artur Beterbiev would have to as well, because he's the WBC champion. He's the one with the mandatory to satisfy.
He would have to petition for an exemption to the mandatory, try and convince Callum Smith to stand down for one more fight, just one more fight, while the two remaining champions settle up with each other. I want to say that there's something unethical about the WBC taking a political stance that affects the fighters, affects the pugilists, that are powerless in this situation. This wasn't a war that they started, and it's not a war that they can end.
You take a hardline stance on this, then where do you draw the line?
When it comes to geopolitics, depending on who you ask, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. So where do you draw the line?
Where's the consistency?
The way you feel right now about the Russian invasion of Ukraine is how some people might feel about America's occupancy in certain foreign territories, certain foreign countries.
It's a sordid affair. Too sordid, I think, for a sanctioning body to take a hardline stance on.
This is sport. Leave the politics to the politicians. Personally, I think the WBC, I think the World Boxing Council, they just need to stay out of it. That's what they need to do. But irrespective of that,
And Dimitri having to file a petition, it's not something that can't be worked around. It can. Artur Beterbiev worked around it. He's a fighter of Russian descent, more or less, but he's based out of Canada. He has a Canadian citizenship.
on that premise, they haven't rescinded his status as a WBC champion. When it comes to Dimitri, Dimitri was born in Kyrgyzstan,
That's in Asia.
where he was born. Not in Moscow, not in the Kremlin, not at the heart of Russia. The guy's from Kyrgyzstan. Currently, he's based out of Indio, California.
So if you can give Artur Beterbiev a pass on the premise that he's based out of Canada, surely you could give Dimitri Bivol a pass because he's based out of the United States.
Indio, California. Born in Kyrgyzstan, over there in Asia.
I don't know why the WBC wants to be a thorn in everybody's ass when it comes to this. I really don't.
Rob Tebbett of ID Boxing tweeted, Beterbiev versus Bivol's situation has not changed since this interview in November of last year. The fight can only happen next if either the WBC title is not on the line or Callum Smith agrees to step aside and the WBC receive and approve a request to license Bivol as a non-Russian fighter.
I have no idea how alienating Russian fighters and removing them from their rank standings is supposed to aid in the war effort.
This stance that the WBC is taking, I don't know what it is exactly Mauricio hopes to accomplish by doing this, though in any event,
He's not just taking a hardline stance when it comes to the crisis between Russia and Ukraine, he's also taking a hardline stance when it comes to the mandatory challenger, Callum Smith.
he's adamant that Artur Beterbiev must satisfy his mandatory challenger next. And needless to say, the energy is not consistent from Mauricio, and it's not consistent from the WBC across the board. Why are you riding Artur Beterbiev's ass?
What do you want that guy's case for?
I don't see the WBC bothering Jermall Charlo, the reigning WBC middleweight champion who hasn't had a fight since the summer of 2021, well over a year ago.
You're not bothering him. Why are you bothering Artur?
Artur Beterbiev, unlike Jermall Charlo, was active last year and he's active this year. He's on the eve of potentially becoming his division's undisputed champion.
Why do you want to get in the way of that? Why do you want to be difficult?
I don't see the World Boxing Council pestering Jermall Charlo. They let him sit out all of last year without incident, without issue. Even worse is that at the WBC's last convention last year, reigning WBC interim champion from the Dominican Republic, Carlos Adames, he petitioned for the WBC to enforce his status as Jermall's mandatory challenger, and that request was denied.
Why is it oh so important that Artur satisfy his mandatory challenger, but it's okay if Jermall doesn't?
You say that guy's got issues outside of the ring, and that's why you're giving him amnesty. I'll tell you what.
What?
If his issues outside of the ring keep him out of the ring for as long as they've been keeping him out of the ring, you should have labeled him a champion in recess. You should have elevated Carlos Adames to full champion status by now. That's what you should have did. But we see
that you're not consistent.
you're riding Artur Beterbiev's ass about mandatory challengers, but you're perfectly okay with Jermall Charlo holding a title hostage, even when it's been well over a year since that guy had a fight. Well over a year. It's actually closer to 2.
And you're okay with it. You're not bothering him.
No special exemptions for Artur. Think about what they're doing at 147 pounds with Errol Spence Jr. They ordered Errol Spence to make a mandated title defense of his WBC welterweight title opposite the ring Keith Thurman.
A welterweight title. Emphasis on welterweight title. Now ask me if Errol's next fight is at welterweight.
No, it isn't. It's up there at junior middleweight. The fight that Errol is about to have is reported to be up there at junior middleweight for no title at all. And the WBC...
They're not bothering Errol Spence Jr. They're not stripping him of his WBC title, even though his very next fight is up there at junior middleweight. They're okay with that.
What you are essentially doing, in essence, is allowing him to remain a champion whilst blowing the weight, because that's what he's doing. You ordered him to defend his welterweight title.
His next fight is at junior middleweight.
So what you're doing is letting him blow the weight and still keep the belt. But you want to ride Artur Better Beef's ass.
Fucking bullshit, man.
It's bullshit. It's fucking bullshit.
Bullshit.
The way I see it, because we're so close to crowning an undisputed light heavyweight champion, that should take precedence over a mandatory challenger, and how monumental that would be towards the light heavyweight division and its profile.
Moreover, it's not like Artur Beterbiev has the luxury of time. He doesn't.
He's 38 going on 39 years old. You want to put this guy through another camp, another fight, put distance between him and what could be the biggest fight of his career so that he can satisfy a mandatory for you guys?
You schmucks.
Years ago, the two remaining champions at this weight, Adonis Stevenson and Sergey Kovalev, politics prevented their fight from happening. It seems that politics may prevent this one from happening.
Unnecessary politics.
WBC's not taking a hardline stance when it comes to some of their other champions and what mandatories they need to satisfy, but they want to pester Artur Beterbiev on the eve of what could be the light heavyweight division's undisputed title fight.
He has to petition for an exemption to the mandatory, convince Callum Smith to step aside, and Dimitri has to file a petition to be
recognized as a fighter from some other region, somewhere other than Russia. They're adding steps.
They're being difficult, making things difficult.
It's looking more and more like we're not going to get this fight this year. And finally, in men's middleweight news, reigning WBO middleweight champion Janibek posted this to his social media, a caption that reads, "I was surprised when I heard that you wanted to fight me, you being Carlos Adames, the WBC's interim champion who we just mentioned in passing in my previous segment." Janibek continued, "Although you are not a champion and not popular, you have the courage. I respect it. I will gladly fight with you, and this fight will be easier than sparring. Be ready."
It was in November of last year, late last year, when Carlos Adames expressed an interest in facing Janibek Alimkhanulai, saying, "I am a champion. Why are you not interested in me?"
To which Janibek Alimkhanulai responded, "How are you? I respect you. You are a good boxer, and you know me. We had 50 rounds of good sparring, but you are not a world champion. If you want to fight me, you need to get the title from Charlo. He won't fight me. If you have a championship title, I'll gladly fight you."
It seems that neither man is having any kind of luck getting Jermall Charlo in the ring. Jermall Charlo, the absentee champion that's been out since the summer of 2021, well over a year ago, going on 2.
Janibek Alimkhanulai can't get Jermall in the ring for obvious reasons. Even if Jermall were a more active fighter and a more active champion, remember that he wasn't interested in fighting Demetrius Andrade, and Demetrius, he's got more of a profile than Janibek, so good luck Janibek getting that guy in the ring. And Carlos is actually on the same side of the street as Jermall, but he can't seem to get him in the ring either.
He's not having any luck.
In the previous segment, I talked about how Carlos Adames was actually in attendance for the WBC's annual convention, and how he asked the WBC to order the fight between him and Jermall Charlo on the premise that Carlos is the WBC's interim champion. And that request, it was denied in spite of the fact that Jermall Charlo didn't even have representation at the convention. There was no one there to speak on his behalf.
No one to protest Carlos's request.
And it seems that he didn't need anyone to represent him because the World Boxing Council themselves denied Carlos Adames' request. So neither Janibek Alimkhanulai or Carlos Adames are having any luck getting Jermall in the ring. Thus, a fight between them That makes sense.
Janibek is finally warmed up to the idea that he should face Carlos Adames, who expressed an interest in facing him late last year.
He's finally warmed up to the idea, though. Fights don't get made based off of tweets. If Janibek is serious, he's got to have his people call Carlos's people and get the conversation going. Open up a dialogue to do a fight between them, presumably in the second or third quarter of this year. Janibek, he can't afford to be a prima donna. He can't afford to be choosy, as he doesn't have the luxury of choice.
If Carlos says that he wants to fight you, it behooves you to take him up on his offer.
And make him an offer in order to bring him over to the top-ranked side of things.
You think that Janibek can get him to cross over?
I think that Carlos said he wants to fight Janibek. I think that Bob Arum a few weeks ago stated quite plainly that he's willing to offer cash money for anybody willing and able to take on Janibek, that he's willing to pay handsomely.
And I think that Janibek has changed his mind. He's willing to fight Carlos. He's open to that idea. He's warmed up to it. So I think the time is now.
It's not like the WBC's putting the squeeze on Jermall Charlo to fight Janibek. Moreover, Charlo's been out so long that it's highly unlikely he'd face someone like Carlos in his very next fight. So how long are you going to wait around for that guy?
We don't even know if he's coming back, though if he does come back, it's highly unlikely he'd face a top contender in Carlos Adames after such a long layoff.
Carlos himself and his team, they may be telling themselves that Jamal's not coming back. In all likelihood, if he returns, it'll be as a super middleweight and he'll vacate the green belt. That might seem like a good idea. That might seem like a plan, though even if he does vacate the green belt.
Say he vacates it, say the WBC elevates you to full championship status.
It's really not a substitute for an actual fight. An actual fight purse. If Bob Arum is saying he's willing to pay big cash for anybody willing to fight Janibek, it behooves you to take him up on his offer. If they don't call you, you should call them.
Make the fight.
Nobody's getting any younger. Do you really want to wait for Jermall Charlo to return before you make a move? Do you really want to wait on the World Boxing Council to elevate you to full champion? You want to wait around on those people to do their job?
That could take a while.
Janibek Alimkhanalai is coming off a rather underwhelming showing opposite the ring Denzel Bentley. He's looking human.
Whereas Carlos Adames is showing improvement in the Sergey Derevyanchenko fight, the more recent Juan Macias Montiel fight, the same Juan Montiel that Charlo couldn't stop.
Carlos stopped him, and he made it look easy. So he's got to keep that momentum going while he's still sharp and showing improvement.
You will notice that the PBC is outsourcing their former champion, Tony Harrison.
He's supposed to be going to Australia to box Tim Tszyu for the WBO interim title at 154 pounds, and it's important to note that that's a no-limit promotion.
No Limit is the lead promoter. Not Tom Brown, not Samson Lukowicz, not someone closer to the PBC.
It's really a no-limit show, and you will notice that Stephen Fulton, he's supposed to be going to the land of the rising sun. He's supposed to be going to Japan to box Naoya Inoue.
That's really not a PBC show. Mr. Akihiko Honda is footing the bill for that fight. He has no affiliation to Al Heyman or his PBC.
It would seem that the PBC is outsourcing those fighters. Would they be willing to outsource Carlos Adames on the premise that they ain't got nothing big for him going on?
He doesn't appear to be otherwise preoccupied. Send him to Top Rank.
No stranger to Top Rank. He used to be a top-ranked fighter.
Make the fight.
They need to liven up the place because the middleweight division has been stagnant.
Make the fight.